Dooley PGA Golf Pro and golf travel expert for concierge golf. So I'm in conversation again with Mike Carroll from Fit for Golf, based in Los Angeles, and we are going to be chatting about generating power in the golf swing. So Mike is going to introduce himself. Hi, Mike.
Hi, John. How's it going? Thanks for the intro. So, yeah, my name is Mike Carroll. I work as a physical trainer for golfers. I'm based in the US, as you said, a little bit south of Los Angeles, about an hour south, in a place called Newport Beach. But for the last 5 years or so, my work has been predominantly trying to help golfers increase their swing speed, really. Prevent injury, and essentially just try and help them as much as possible with their golf game through improved physical capabilities.
And with we were chatting last week about fitness and so forth. And one of the topics we started to go into, but we ran out of time, was about power in the golf swing, how the body can generate it. And I suppose besides that part, the second part of the question then would be any of the misconceptions that people would have that you may have come across as you're coaching people to say, okay, if I torque this way or do something like this, their understanding was X, Y, and Z, and it should have been A, B, and C, that kind of stuff. What would you kind of talk about from that perspective?
I suppose the kind of most important way to look at it is that when we're talking about power in the golf swing, really what we're talking about is swing speed, which is a term that I think more people are becoming familiar with now, since, you know, their lessons have TrackMan and things like that, and they're probably hearing about it a lot more in golf broadcasts. And what swing speed really is an expression of force. So the only way that you can produce swing speed is by producing a certain amount of force. And the more force that you can produce in the right direction, basically, or applying it in the right manner, is what results in clubhead speed. And when we look at that from a physical perspective, the only things in our body that can produce force are muscles. So now that kind of opens up the conversation of, well, if we know that muscles are the only thing that can produce force, and we're trying to increase how much force we produce in the golf swing, obviously training the muscles is where the goal is going to lie, basically, from a physical development standpoint. And there's two kind of main ways that we can train ourselves to increase how much force our muscles can produce. The first one is that we can get more efficient or better at recruiting and using the muscle fiber we already have. And we can do that essentially with practicing the movement that we're trying to do at in an explosive an effort as possible. So people have done this for a long time with their golf swing. If you're trying to increase your swing speed and you start practicing swinging as fast as you can, your body is going to get better at recruiting the muscle fibers that are responsible for the golf swing. We also see this in strength training. So if you start doing some squats tomorrow, let's say, you won't be recruiting all of the available muscle fibers in your legs. You might just be recruiting, let's just say, 60% of them, because your body is not used to doing it. But then with practice, let's just say week on week, your body is going to get slightly better at increasing the muscle fibers you already have. And that's going to allow you produce more force, aka power. And that's independent of, or not related to, an increase in the size of your muscles. It's just by getting better at using the muscles you already have. And that's why people can see very rapid improvements in things like clubhead speed or strength in different gym type exercises when they first start out. That's what's happening. Your body is getting more efficient at recruiting the muscles that are involved in that activity. The second part of that equation then, which is also very important, is there's a huge relationship between how big a muscle fiber is and how much force it can produce. And that's what most people usually associate like weightlifting or power training with, is growing the size of their muscles. And that is an important part for definite. And if you can combine both of them, so you get better at learning how to recruit and use the muscle fibers you already have, while simultaneously working on increasing the size of your muscle fibers, then you're kind of covering the two big keys for increasing power production. And that's quite a simplified overview, but they would be two of the big ones for definite.
And when it comes to golf, then, what is there a general set of exercises that you'd have, or would you, or is one size fit all, or is it a big more of a variation of different things?
To be honest, I think we can do pretty well with a fairly generalized set of exercises. People often, get down the rabbit hole of individualization and making sure that it's the exact right stuff for the individual person. But like, we're all humans with the same joints, the same muscles, the same bones, and there's way more similarities than there is differences between all of us, basically, who play golf. Now, the differences are still important, but to be honest, the types of things that you're going to have somebody doing, whether they're a 18-year-old who's about to start playing college golf, or a 75-year-old senior, the principles are going to be the exact same, but the intensity level and where they start might be very different. And the three big things that people will be concentrating on, to be honest, are mobility. Because if you can get your joints to move through a greater range of motion and you can make a longer backswing, that gets physics on your side for generating more speed in the downswing. And that's actually independent of your muscle power, to be honest. Because it will be mobility will be more important for that length of backswing as opposed to strength or muscle size. And then the other two big ones are, if we can do some kind of broad term, but some strength training. So basically trying to make our muscles bigger and stronger, which is primarily done through moving heavy objects. So some sort of resistance training, whether that be with free weights or machines or strong resistance bands or something like that. And then I would also have a third category, which would be speed training, which would be a little bit different to the strength training, where you'd be moving heavy objects to try and get bigger and stronger. With the speed training, you're going to be moving light objects as fast as you can. And that's not going to have as much an effect on the muscle fibers, but it's going to have an extremely potent effect on a fancy term that sounds complicated, but it's not really, which is the nervous system. Basically what that means is, I touched on earlier that muscles are the only things that can produce force, but muscle force is going to be dictated by the signal that's sent to the muscles by our brain, which goes through our spinal cord, which is the nervous system. So you can think of, yes, muscle fiber size and strength, incredibly important, but the message that's going to them is controlled by the brain and the nervous system. So those are the things really that are going to make a big difference.
So when it comes then to let's say putting those three parts together to create a program, and if we were talking about a program, as you mentioned, from let's say the 18-year-old grand, something similar, but the intensity might be a bit more in depth. If we just popped up there to the 75 or the 60-year-old person, whether it be male or female, or you say take a male or female or both at the same time. If you were, would you typically come across would you come across a couple, let's say husband and wife, or a lady, a golfer, and a male golfer that decided we wanted to have a class together? Would it be similar type of activities, but just different weights, or?
Yeah, so the training principles in terms of making sure that you're staying on top of mobility, strength, and speed never really change, regardless of what age you are. But what may start to happen is that depending on the person or on the person's age, if things change, throughout their life, you might put a different emphasis on each element. So for example, if you have somebody, let's just say let's just say you have somebody who has been, let's use the 75, let's use the 60-year-old, for example, like you just brought up, the male and the female. Let's just say, for example, that 60-year-old was a rugby player from age 14 to 35. And for those 20 years, he was pumping heavy weights and got exceptionally strong. But he didn't really do much mobility work at all and never trained speed by swinging as fast as he could. If that guy is still pretty strong or has still kept up the habits of lifting weights from when he was a rugby player, he's probably not going to see huge improvements in his power in the golf swing from continuing to get stronger and stronger, because he already has that base covered pretty well. But he might see big improvements from improving his mobility and by practicing swinging faster, so that basically he can transfer the very high muscle strength he has into his golf swing. On the flip side, if we take the 60-year-old female, and as a general rule, not always, but it's pretty much guaranteed, females will tend to have better mobility around their joints than males, but less strength. And for that reason, females generally don't need any mobility training really at all, or else very little, but they 100% need training to try and improve their muscle mass and their muscle strength. So if you consider the 60-year-old male and female doing the same training session, probably going to have nearly identical exercises, but the male will probably spend a larger amount of time working on the mobility stuff that he's missing out on, whereas the female might cover that in 2 or 3 minutes just to make sure that she keeps doing it and she doesn't lose any. And she'll spend way more time working on the strength exercises. And just because the male has a high level of strength, it's not like he's going to stop training strength and never do it again, because it would start to decline pretty rapidly, but he'd just do enough for maintenance. So in the same session, the male and the female would both work mobility and strength, but the male would have to put a much bigger emphasis on the mobility because he already has a very high level of strength. But because the female probably is pretty good mobility, because it's usually not an issue, but a low level of strength, she'll spend more time emphasizing the strength.
Right. I mean, so essentially, get out the medicine balls, get out the elastic bands, start jumping around the place, and there you go. No, I mean, a bit more. I mean, facetious.
Yeah, no, like, to be honest, you're not too far off. Like, once you have a basic list of exercises, you could pretty much keep doing them like continuously forever. Right. Try and gradually improve your range of motion in the stretches. Try and gradually improve your power output in things like jumping and throwing, which is really good for the explosive type activity. And if you have access to weights, try and gradually bump up the amount of weight you're doing in each exercise. And from a very general standpoint, like that's putting you in a pretty good spot, you know.
And from a frequency of weekly activity, now, depending on how much you can do and how much you can't, would you be saying if someone could do this once a week or 3 times a week would be great?
Yeah, you definitely want to get it more than once a week. I generally prescribe 3-day per week programs.
Right.
Like to be honest, I would view it in terms of like it completely depends on sort of how much time the person have or what suits them. But in terms of the strength stuff, where you're doing some sort of resistance training, trying to get a little bit stronger, if you're training pretty hard in each session, it doesn't make sense really to do it daily, because muscles require a little bit of time to recover. So if you stress your muscles pretty hard on, let's just say, a Monday, there's no real point in stressing them again hard on the Tuesday, because they'll still be recovering from the Monday session. Whereas if you did it again on Wednesday, they'd probably be in a much better spot to train reasonably hard again. Mobility is a little bit different in that, like, we don't say get fatigued or really damage muscle fibers from doing, dynamic stretching and things like that, because it's a much different mode to, yourself. If you do a set of, let's just say, really heavy squats, for, let's say, 3 sets of 6 reps on a Monday, how your legs might feel on the Tuesday or even the Wednesday. There's going to be some soreness and fatigue there. But if you did some stretching on a Monday, you're not going to feel that on Tuesday. It's a very kind of transient or short-lived feeling. So where I'm going with this is, I like mobility work to be done a little bit every day. So I think something as simple as literally a 5-minute routine can go a long way in the long term for staying on top of mobility, and a way that kind of people can put this on top of an activity that they already do to sort of increase their adherence is, if they go to the golf course to, say, practice or play golf, for 5 or 10 minutes before they leave the house, they should have a mobility routine that they go through. And then if it's on a day when they're doing, say, a workout routine, they're going to have to warm up before they do their training anyway, or at least they should. So that's when they could do their mobility routine. Like, I know, for example, if every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I go to the gym. So I know that that's going to be the first 5 minutes of, say, my gym session. I'm going to get my mobility work done. But then on the days that, say, I don't go to the gym, I might go and hit golf balls. So for 5 minutes before I leave the house, I'll go and do that mobility work, because there's a better chance you'll do it at home rather than when you get to the range. And if you can stick to that, even if it's only 5 minutes, but you're doing it, at a pretty high frequency per week, it definitely makes a big difference in the long term. And I think that's way more effective than, let's say, a 1-hour yoga session or stretching session, once a week.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. I mean, comparing the 5 minutes or 5 or 10 minute kind of stretching, and this would be something I'm sure would be coached and pinpointed. Say, if you do this, this will help with a bit of arms, back, neck, lower back, legs, calves, quads, whatever it might be.
Exactly, yeah.
Heels, wrists, arms, just to keep kind of everything moving. So I certainly find, as I've got older, I'm only as I said, happy birthday last week. Between this is just me, the back of the neck here, wrists tend to get stiff and problematic, and my maintenance would be going through a range of motion exercises just to keep all that stuff going, plus other things as well, and parts of the coaching sessions that I would talk about with people. I mean, it's just not just standing there talking about instruction on the swing. The coaching is about playing better golf. And when it comes to mobility, or it comes to lifestyle choices from different types of, let's say if there's different types of food supplements that can help you with mobility and stuff like that, I would recommend things to look at. Also, when it comes to mobility, I typically would suggest there's people about resistance training. That would be my kind of one that I would kind of recommend. No, if you can't do it, if it's yoga, Pilates, one of the stuff that's close to you that you can get out and do, I'd recommend doing something like that. No, is that along the right track to suggest to somebody if they haven't got access to someone like yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's like the probably the biggest benefits for people in regards to fitness, whether it just be for golf or general quality of life, is people going from doing nothing to doing something. That's usually where the biggest benefits are. Once you have people kind of in the habit of exercising or being active, and they're kind of interested in taking it a little bit of a step further, or they want to apply it to something a little bit more specific, like, I wonder if this could help my golf a little bit better, then the real big things to work on are making sure that your mobility is good so that you can move through a decent range of motion, and then make sure that you're working on the strength and power of your muscles. You brought up misconceptions earlier, and one of the big ones there is definitely that people have an idea that getting stronger makes flexibility worse, or causes them to stiffen or tighten up, which isn't really true at all. So it can actually improve your mobility. And I think one of the best ways to improve mobility or range of motion is to do exercises through the range of motion that you're trying to improve, but with some added weight. So if you think of people doing, let's just say, some weighted torso rotations, where maybe they have like a bar that weighs, 5 kilos or something like that across their shoulders, or they have a 3 or 5 kg med ball, and they're working on making, as big, let's say, a backswing motion as possible. That's going to really help with their ability to rotate. And if we think of, let's just say, lower body mobility, the kind of 3 main joints in the lower body that we want to stay on top of are the ankles, the knees, and the hips. And if you can get somebody develop the ability to do a reasonably deep squat while holding some additional weight, either, you know, just something propped up in front of them here, or if they're using a bar across their shoulders or something like that, or just using their own body weight. But that's a way that you can simultaneously work on improving your strength and your range of motion. Because something that people kind of forget is that the idea of mobility, i.e. bringing your joint through a big range of motion, that does require some strength. So just doing kind of the traditional static stretching type stuff, or even, let's say, assisted stretching, where, you know, you might be lying on your back and using a towel or a strap to stretch your hamstring, or you might be grabbing your arm across your chest or something like that. You're going to be improving the flexibility of the muscle there, but you're not really doing anything to improve the strength or control and your ability to bring that joint through a range of motion. So definitely, if people are kind of limited for time, I would say that like a basic resistance training routine, kind of 3 times a week, for even if it's 15 minutes, can pay huge dividends for range of motion and strength. And also kind of the one that a lot of people, one of the reasons that people gravitate away from that sort of stuff towards walking or running or biking or something like that, is for the cardiovascular benefits. But if you have a kind of well-designed resistance training program, you'll definitely notice the heart rate getting up and the breathing rate getting up as well. So you can kind of cover 3 really important things for general fitness, which would be mobility, strength, and cardiovascular health. And so you're kind of ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, excellent. That's excellent. And for those range of different types of exercises, you on your app, Mike, would you have all those different types of exercise available for people to view?
Yeah, exactly. So kind of the beginner one that I usually tell people to go towards if they're just interested in sort of getting into it from a more of a entry level. I made a 101 program. It's called Fit for Golf 101, kind of golf fitness for beginners. And that's been out now about 3 years. And there's probably been 1,000 golfers have gone through it.
Excellent.
Range of ages from like 40 to honestly 80 years of age. Starts off really simple, predominantly body weight stuff. You have some resistance bands or light dumbbells, great. It's really just concentrating on what we talked about, some mobility and range of motion stuff, some balance stuff, some basic strength stuff, and some basic sort of speed or power stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the key, like a lot of people are sort of worried about starting. They feel like that, you know, they're a little bit too out of shape to get involved with something, or, you know, is it too late for them? And to be honest, once people start, they'll get a really quick idea of what sort of level they need to be at, take it nice and conservatively, and just gradually build up over time. Like it's really no different if you're 65 and haven't exercised in 10 years, or if you're 25 and you're an athlete playing other sports. Like, you just need to find the appropriate starting level, give it a little bit of time to see how your body adapts, and gradually build up. Like it's no different to basically any type of physical activity, you know?
Yeah, that's excellent. And again, your app can be downloaded from your websites, and your website address again, Mike, is
fitforgolf.blog.
Grand, Fit for Golf. I'll add that. I'll add that on to the notes underneath the video. I think that's super, Mike, and that's a great place for people to start, or at the same time at different levels to get more information about improving speed, improving their physical fitness, better mobility, and to get going, essentially to make swings more often without getting fatigued. I mean, and that's one of the big things in golf is the 12th hole, 13th hole, when the handbrake comes up and the body starts.
Yeah, exactly. And
a good what it should be.
A good point on that there is, like, when that does happen, people, they, like, you always hear them say, like, I need to improve my fitness. I got tired on the 12th or 13th hole.
Yeah.
And people always associate that type of lack of fitness with cardiovascular fitness. So they think about like walking, running, you know, pumping up the heart rate. But if you think about what's happening when you're playing golf, like golf is slow walking
Yeah.
with lots of breaks and golf swings.
Yeah.
So unless you're in, like, nobody on, let's say, hole 13, when they notice their swing starts, you know, kind of getting a little bit worse because they're tired, that's not happening anybody because their heart rate is after starting to go through the roof and they're gasping for breath, like you might be, you know, say hiking up a mountain or playing five-a-side soccer.
Yeah.
Usually what's happening is your muscles are after getting tired and they're starting to stiffen up. You can't hold your posture, you can't make the same rotation, and you're not improving that with, you know, walking or biking or something like that. You need to be doing exercises that are stressing your muscular system rather than your cardiovascular system. And that's where the resistance training makes the big difference.
And that would be highlighting another misconception as well, that that I'd come across that too quite a bit from time to time. People talking about during the round they're flying for the first 12 holes and then they get tired. And I come across that quite a bit, and particularly with the elder fellas. When I say elder fellas, in the 65 age 65 plus, and I mean even for guys in their 40s and their 50s, no excuse, get out and do a bit of stuff. I mean, I know there's lots going on, but God, get out and do something, because I mean, I come across fellas now really bad backs, really bad body, and that's from a lack of not looking after yourself. And again, as you say, it's back to that. If you get into the habit of doing 5-minute stuff frequently and often, and it's injury prevention as opposed to being fit for golf as well. So I mean, there's a lot of other stuff going into
like that's, you know? Well, yeah, like the first factor of fitness, like if you consider in any sports or even just daily life, is basically the ability to perform what you want to do. Like that's number one step for fitness. So if you're injured or you're hurt, like that is not your fitness taken care of, like, you know. And people who have, you know, dodgy knees, dodgy hips, dodgy backs, well, dodgy isn't really the word that should be used, but it's how people would often refer to them, like, is if somebody has a, you know, a troublesome knee or a troublesome lower back, anytime that they're advised on doing some sort of strengthening work, like the person with the sore knee is going to say, I can't do squats or I can't do step ups because of my knee. Whereas in fact, that's exactly what they need to improve the strength and range of motion at that joint. Now, it might be a little bit sore or uncomfortable at first, but that's getting back to the whole point of starting at the appropriate level and gradually building up. It's the same for the person with the bad back. They might be saying that, or the person who has a troublesome back, they might be saying, I can't do, you know, these types of, you know, let's just say deadlifting or weightlifting motions where I'm picking something up from the ground because of my back. And that's exactly the thing that they probably need to strengthen the area there and improve their confidence in the ability to use that particular part of their body to do something.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit counterintuitive at first, but almost always people start feeling a little bit better once they start using the area and progressively strengthening it. And the flip side is if you have a troublesome area, like say a knee or a lower back, and you start spending time basically convincing yourself, this area is an issue for me, I need to be careful with it, and I shouldn't be using it for, say, let's just say these squats or these deadlifts or any type of strengthening activities, all that's going to happen over time then is that area is going to get weaker and it's going to lose range of motion because you're not using it. Yeah. So you're actually going to end up in a much worse spot than trying to gradually strengthen it. And you're not going to damage a part of your body with some sort of rudimentary or basic level strengthening stuff. No way is there enough, say, force happening there to actually cause damage. There might be a little bit of discomfort at first, but that would probably dissipate pretty quickly and you'll notice that it starts to feel better.
And I mean, even just kind of just taking all that you mentioned there about that information, knowledge that you have about the training, and I suppose people would be nearly better off getting some help with their local, we'll say, fitness coach or strength and conditioning coach, or even if it's Pilates or yoga or the resistance training, as you say, anything.
If you can find a decent trainer in your area to like instruct you on a basic series of exercises, like either go to them and tell them that like you want a series of exercises you can follow in the gym, or go to them and tell them you want a basic series of exercises you can follow at home, either with no equipment or you're willing to buy some equipment. or ask someone to come to your house and show you. Like that is definitely better than just following, say, like my app, where the app can be used for that.
Yeah,
definitely. And it's obviously a much, cheaper version than going to the trainer and probably paying, €50 an hour or whatever. But if you can get it's the same as anything. If you can get some in-person instruction at first, that's definitely going to increase how quickly you get competent in what you're doing. And then once you get comfortable in what you're doing, you can sort of explore, well, I've been doing this for a month. I'm pretty comfortable with it. What's the next step so that I can make further progress? Like, it's like getting golf lessons. You're going to show somebody something pretty simple in their first few lessons. And then a year later, you might be working on whatever, different trajectories or something, or specialty shots or something, but that's not going to be on day one.
No, not at all. Because I mean, everybody starts somewhere, and just need to get in the habit of doing something, learning it, and figuring out how it works for you. And then as they say, I call it kind of layers of learning, or the layers of the habit increases. You have more feel, you have more insight, and you can kind of see how you do things, and you can see how the results are. And I think it's very much the same approach to a lot of things that we learn. So we see stuff, we feel stuff, and they're two really important parts to the training part as well. And is that you can feel, learn, and see it. And the hard thing in golf is that you can do lots of good stuff and never see a good score for weeks.
Yeah, true. One of the things too that's definitely nice for golfers for proving adherence, like, is some people who, and I've gotten this email lots of times, is that sometimes people who aren't disciplined enough to, say, keep up with an exercise program, even though they know they should be doing stuff, they are disciplined enough to keep doing it when they start seeing benefits on the golf course. Like if the golf ball starts going 10 yards further, or their, let's just say their lower back is now no longer hurting on the last hole, or they can now play 3 days a week rather than 1 day a week, then they'll keep doing it because they're kind of seeing a benefit, as opposed to, just, I know I should do it, but I don't really want to,
Excellent, Mike. That was fantastic. That was a lot of really great information. Superb, absolutely superb.
Thanks, John. No worries at all. I enjoyed it.
And so, thank you very much for your time, Mike. Really much appreciated. And again, as I say, for people, if they want to get in contact with you for if there's any questions or anything like that, I'll put all your information on the video, or beneath, or somewhere attached to it, so they can certainly get in contact with you, because very generous of your time. As I say, a lot of fantastic information. I found that really beneficial, talking about certainly about the training method. And also as well, I would definitely go along with the idea of getting some help with somebody going to a coach. Because you'll get more out of the training session with the person than you will by yourself, because you'll get to do, you just go through a better training. It's
just make sure you're spending your time and effort on doing something properly, Yeah. Just take care of it at first. And then once you get comfortable, you can do things on your own. But, that's basically it.
Indeed, Mike, that's fantastic.
Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, my friend. Talk to you very soon.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.